Let's review our Nosurge, Ode to an Unborn Star, which is a Japanese RPG created in 2014 by Gust. Our Nosurge throws away standard RPG procedures and adopts unusual and risky design that somehow pays off in order to create an experience like no other. However, this RPG is not suitable for everyone due to its heavy visual novel elements, its minimalistic battle style, its surprisingly dark tones, its fan service, and its fearlessness to break the fourth wall. This doesn't mean it's bad, it's just an acquired taste, like grapefruit. Most people won't enjoy it, but it is absolute gold to people like myself. Our Nosurge is a sequel to CL Nosurge. CL Nosurge and R Nosurge are sequels to R Tonelico. You might have never heard of R Tonelico, but you might have heard of the developer's other series, which is the Atelier series. The most famous of which is Atelier Rise. The Atelier series is known to be a niche series, but the R Tonelico and R Nosurge series are even nicher, if that's a word. I'm a huge fan of R Tonelico, having bought and played the trilogy as well as R Nosurge. I feel that supporting niche titles that do things differently is a great way to improve RPG diversity. I feel R Nosurge is actually a visual novel in RPG clothing. R Nosurge has a lot of text. Most of it is unvoiced, with only simple cutscenes where the character models are facing each other to the right and left of the screen. Even if you cut out the gameplay elements of the game and only have the text part, our Nosurge will still be a complete game of a considerable length of 30 hours. Much of the optional text is grouped into 3 categories. The first is synthesis. In this game, there are almost 200 items that you can synthesize, as well as 2 skits talking about each item. That's almost 400 skits. Watching the skits alone will net you over 6 hours of gameplay. Synthesis is a core part of the game because without it, you can't get the true ending, and you also will perform horribly in combat. Our Nosurge is not as synthesis heavy as the Atelier series because you can't tweak an individual item's stats and traits. However, it makes up for it in quantity and dialogue. The items are extremely well drawn and intricate, with quirkiness that matches the imagination of the Harry Potter books. One of the most fun aspects to the synthesis is the dance that the 3 characters do before the synthesis. There are multiple dances and they are well choreographed. You can skip it, but it's often fun to watch. The second category of the optional text comes from geometric dives, which is when the main character dives into the subconscious mind of a heroine and her allies in order to unlock her powers. You get to explore the inner thoughts of almost all major characters in a fictional world with symbolic or metaphorical representation. Each dive has its own story of about half an hour, and there are over a dozen stories. The stories themselves are lightly animated with no voiceover. The dives were a lot of fun, and I would say the game would not be complete without them, because much of the character development is in those dives. Each character has at least one major plot twist that impacts not only how you see them as a person, but also the entire meaning of the main story. All of the dives will easily take over 6 hours, even when reading at a breakneck speed. Finally, the last optional text comes in the form of bath skits between the protagonists and one of the 2 heroines. There are over 100 bath skits where the characters talk about their journey, events, and experiences. If reading 20 hours of text doesn't bring up the image of having a good time, then you can safely skip this game. Now that we talked a bit about the optional stuff, let's talk about the main game. Without spoiling anything, the main story of the game is unique and bold. It is about a planet with an advanced civilization that was destroyed 5,000 years ago due to a sun being expanded into a red giant. Right before its destruction, the leader converted the planet into energy to use to travel to another planet on a giant colony ship. But that energy was sabotaged, and now the colony ship have been drifting in space aimlessly for 5,000 years. The premise of the story is not that unique, but don't be fooled. This story is one of the most unique stories I've seen. This story does not involve time travel, which seems to be the generic fallback for stories that try to be unique. I don't want to spoil it, but it is a compelling story that goes where almost no RPG has gone before. It's impactful, and I will probably remember the story for the rest of my life. Throughout the game, you have hundreds of opportunities for multiple dialogue choices, and some of the stuff you can say is so corny or so offensive that would probably never be able to sleep well if I said it in real life. This makes excellent replay value because there is always the burning question of what happens if you choose those ridiculously stupid options. Let's talk about the game's art. I absolutely love the art style. It is clean, beautiful, and stylish. The character design and detail are the star of the show, but the UI is also spectacular and fits the world very well. Sure, this game may not look as realistic as Final Fantasy XIII, but this game's budget is nowhere near as large and is a different type of charm. The game uses a fixed distance camera that cannot be moved or rotated, so you only get one angle. The environments look sleek, but each location feels a bit empty. The good news is that every map in the game has a unique look, and there are over 20 of them. You will be revisiting the same maps very often, but don't forget you're trapped in a colony ship, not a planet. It makes sense that there is limited space. The animations are less varied and stiffer compared to a AAA game like Final Fantasy XIII. I believe that the animation in Nosurge is not motion captured, and it uses gestures and exaggeration as a primary means of communication. The facial animation is stiff, with limited movement and jarring transitions. The lip movement is pretty bad, with the quality being on par with some PS1 games. It is just swapping between an open and closed mouth at a constant rate with no transition. There are many lines where the character speaks entirely voiced sentences while the mouth stays completely closed the entire time. Lip movement isn't that important in a game, but this is an example of how you won't be finding animations matching games with a AAA budget. However, there are quite a few nice anime cutscenes if that's your thing. The music is amazing. It's very rare that a game series will have music where I can instantly recognize the style. It has ancient Japanese music fused with electronically modified futuristic contemporary music. It's quite striking, and many of the songs are great. There's also other composers that contributed to the soundtrack, adding to the strength to the mix. Check it out. Sadly, this game has some audio balancing issues. Many times, the song and the dialogue clash so neither is clear. Also, there are quite a few spelling errors. The battle is quite unique. It is designed from the grounds up in a minimalistic system that blends real-time action with turns. One of the most striking aspects of the battle is that you feel like you're only controlling one character. You might be thinking, there are clearly two characters, the guy fighting in the front and the heroine singing in the back. However, let's ask the question of how many characters do you control in Super Mario 64? Most people will say 1, but the answer is actually 2. You control Super Mario, obviously, but also Lakitu, who controls the camera. In this sense, you control 2 characters in combat in Nosurge, but their roles do not overlap and they could be easily represented as 1. In the battle, there are 3 lanes of enemies, and you switch between which lane to attack in real time. You start your turn with a set number of attacks, and when you run out of attacks, it's the enemy's turn. Every turn, there are certain enemies with an exclamation sign above them. This exclamation sign means that the enemy will attack next turn. If you manage to break an enemy with exclamation sign, they will lose a turn. If all enemies with an exclamation sign are broken, then you will get a free turn with all your attacks replenished. Your goal is to keep breaking enemies to get free turns so that it is perpetually your turn. Breaking a boss won't get you a free turn, but they will do one fewer attack during their enemy's turn, making it easier to survive. During the enemy's turn, they will attack you and you will need to press the circle button to guard, which puts up a shield for 2 seconds per press. Every turn, you can only press circle a limited number of times, so you have to use your guard sparingly rather than spamming it. Some enemies have attacks where you have to put your guard up very quickly. Meanwhile, other attacks try to juke you into pressing the guard too early. For example, one of the bosses point giant guns at you. Then a few seconds later, even bigger guns come out. Then the guns open slowly, then they charge up, and the camera starts to shake. It fires a huge beam, and then the beam travels, and travels, and travels. By this time, you might have been tricked into pressing the guard button. However, it's not even close. The beam envelops your characters, but that's also the wrong time to guard. Then the camera zooms out into space and pauses for 3 seconds. Then finally, there's a huge explosion in space, and that is when you should guard. Basically, the whole long animation is to trick you to waste your guard early. You need to memorize when the move actually hits, so you can block the attack. Blocking attacks is important because not only does it keep you alive, but also prevents the harmonic gauge from depleting. The harmonic gauge shows how powered up your heroine is. At the beginning of the battle, you choose a song to sing. As you continue to attack, the gauge goes up. As the song gets stronger, you will start to get support attack from the song, and you have the choice to unleash the song and blow up all the enemies in the entire map. If you don't guard correctly, your harmonic gauge will remain at 0, and you won't be able to power up your song. Finally, let's talk about the dark topics and fan service. This game explores topics that can get you demonetized on YouTube just for mentioning it. In Nosedive, there is a coin-operated electric chair, where thousands use it, including a boy that saved up for a month just for access to euthanasia. In Ion's Geometric, there is a noose displayed, and Ion, who is one of the 2 heroines, orders a main character to use the noose. These 2 examples happen during a dive, which is in the realm of the subconscious and therefore not real. But these occurrences are not only limited to happening in the subconscious. If you are not comfortable with exploring these topics, then this game isn't for you. Another reason why this game isn't for everyone is that most people don't enjoy fan service. This game's fan service have been toned down comparatively since R Tonelico 3. However, I wouldn't feel too embarrassed to play R Nosurge in front of my wife and daughters, but I definitely won't play R Tonelico 3 in front of them. There are a lot of raunchy jokes that go way beyond saying things like your breasts are too small. The character called Nay has her butt exposed, and the character Prime has pretty much the front part of her underwear missing as part of her design. If you're having second thoughts about playing this game already, maybe this game will make you uncomfortable. If you're still here and everything sounds interesting so far, then congratulations, you're part of the niche group that can enjoy this niche game. I will give this game a 7.5 out of 10. The visual novel aspect is too heavy for most gamers to enjoy, but is saved by its great music and fresh approach to storytelling. If you want, you can see my complete uncommented playthrough in the description below. Thanks for watching and happy gaming!